Hi, I'm Wendy from the Roanoke Public Libraries, and this is part of our ongoing series of genealogy tutorials for the beginners. Now, we have gone over and shown examples of what vital records are, and those are records that are issued by either a county or a state for the birth, death, or marriage of an individual. We also went over about the difference between primary versus secondary source. A primary source is the actual document that was created for the event of the individual. So, whenever they were born, a birth certificate is issued. When they die, a death certificate is issued. And we talked about court records or land records. All those are primary source records. Secondary sources are created after the fact. So say someone goes into the courthouse and they create an index of everyone that died during a certain time frame in that county, and they create an index. Or perhaps they're looking at a court record and they're transcribing that handwritten court record and they're typing it up. That's a secondary source. Now you want to get back to the primary source documents because one, the secondary source may not have included all the information that was on that primary source document. So for instance, if it's a death index, maybe they didn't put the person's parent's name or where the parents were born. They just put the individual's birth date and death date and where they were buried. So it was an incomplete record because it's just an index pointing you to the primary source. It wasn't supposed to be all inclusive. Or perhaps you're looking at a transcribed court record and what the person is reading from the handwriting is a different name than what was actually written. Perhaps they're reading it and they think it says something else, but yet you look at it, and because you are researching that family, you know what it says. Or perhaps you're familiar with that geographic region and you know what town they're writing down. So perhaps your interpretation of that handwritten document is different than the person that transcribed it. We are going to go over in the next few tutorials on how you find these primary source documents for the vital records. And we're going to first show Ancestry, and then there'll be two other videos after this showing other sources. Now I want to talk about the difference between the personal subscription you may have for Ancestry and the subscription a public library or an institution might have, which is Ancestry Library. So they both have similar information, but how you access it is a little bit different. If you have a private subscription to Ancestry, you can look at it anywhere with your username and password, log in, and it's ancestry.com, and you type in your information, your username and your password. If it's an institutional subscription for Ancestry Library, you have to access it within that entity that is subscribing to Ancestry Library. So if it's a public library that is subscribing to it, you would go and use either the library's computers or the library's Wi-Fi in order to get to Ancestry, and you would log in under ancestrylibrary.com. Now, not every public library offers this. You need to check with your individual libraries to see if they do offer that subscription. Also, some states offer a smaller subset of data from Ancestry, and the Tennessee State Library has created a directory of all the other states' home pages for where they house their electronic databases. So you would want to go, say, to Alabama, see what they offer for people to access at home and that the state is paying for. Now, not all of them offers an Ancestry package, so you would need to go and look at each of your individual states to see what they offer. I do know that New York and Virginia both offer some sort of Ancestry database that you can look at your home. Now, you have to be a resident of that state to access that state's database. I'm going to show you an example of what Virginia offers. Now, it's called Ancestry for Virginians, and it's not the entire Ancestry database, every record that they have. It's just smaller subsets. So it's the death records, the marriage records, the colonial records, and divorce records that pertain to Virginia. Now, again, you need to be a resident of Virginia to access the Ancestry for Virginians. So again, go to that Tennessee directory, look up your state, and then see what databases they offer. Now, I'm going to show Ancestry and how you would look up vital records. Again, that's the birth, death, marriage records. And I'm going to show 3 different ways that you can search. One is a global search, which is what most people will use. Another is a category search, and another is the card catalog search. And then I'm going to show you what an indexed record or a secondary source is, and how you can use that secondary source to get back to the primary source. So I'm going to now go to Ancestry. This is the global search screen. It's on the home page, and this is again how most people will search. When you click here, show more options, it gives you different things that you can add. So if you know the marriage date and where they got married, you could put that information in there. If you know the death date, if you know their mother, if you know their spouse, you can add all that information here. You could also, when you type in a date, you can either do exact to that date, or you can expand and say plus or minus 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So if you're having difficulties finding your person, you may want to change the date range a little bit, and you can also do that for any of these date cells. You can do that plus or minus. So I'm going to erase all of these. Here is where you would say exact for a last name, or you could do a sounds like, a similar, or a sound X. Now say if I'm typing in Bailey, I can look for Bailey exactly, or if I want to expand it, I can play with all the different options, because Bailey can be spelled different ways. So you want to play with that, and again, you want to do that in here. You could check different ones, see what different options you get, because each one will use a different algorithm of how it searches and indexes. So you want to play with that and do your searching a little differently, and that's if you are having difficulty finding your person. Now, if you need more information about these settings, you can click About here, and it explains. And it also talks about wildcards. Wildcards are where you can use either an asterisk or a question mark in place of letters. So an asterisk would be if you're doing multiple letters. So like if you're looking for a Ziegler and you want to have letters in between the Z and the G, and it doesn't matter how many letters, it will look for all of those. So Ziegler can be spelled Z-E-I-G-E. Yeah. It could be Z-I-G-E or Z-I-E-G-L-E-R. So there's various things. So this will return results for any of these. If I was doing Bailey and I didn't know if it was going to be a Y or an EY, I can also do an asterisk. If I just wanted to have one letter replacement, like an Anderson, I could just do the question mark, and it would find Anderson with an O or an Anderson with an E. So if I was looking for either one of those, that would be my search. So that gives you a little information about wildcards. And you can do that also for the first name, and you can change in the you can change these different options. Now, whenever you're searching for place, as soon as you start typing, it will start giving you options. You want to select their options. You don't want to continue to type because you want to use what they indexed and how they classified that state. So if I decide just to do Mississippi and type out United States, I don't want to do that because they don't have it classified under United States. They have it classified under USA. Okay, I'm going to do a basic search without any limiters, and I am going to search for Herbert Kinsaw. And the reason why I selected him is because we can see the index, which again is a secondary source, and we can find the original record. So I'm going to show you the difference between the two. So here is an index, and you can use your mouse key to scroll in, and you can hold and move this around a little bit. So here's Herbert Kinsaw, and he was married to Ruth. He was 43 and she was 31, and they were both from Roanoke, Virginia. They got married in 1948. That's the name of the Justice of the Peace and the witnesses. And they got married in North Carolina. Over here, while I'm here, I'm going to show you a couple of these tools. If you use this little bar with the arrow and click on that, you get all kinds of options. So you can look at any related. You can see the source documents here. If there was any suggested records that Ancestry had, they would list it here, and this would be the detail. And I'll show it on a different screen so you can see that. And then this is a toolbar where you can invert colors. So this is if you're having a hard time reading this. If you invert colors, you can change this. And this is how you would save. You click the down arrow. If you want to save it to your shoebox, a shoebox is if you have a subscription to Ancestry and you want to put it in a file so you can look at it later. You're not quite sure if it belongs to your person. You're going to put it in your shoebox. If you save it to your computer, say you're at a public library, you want to save it and put it on a flash drive, you're going to download it to your computer. And you'll notice that it's going to give you some letters or numbers up here for the name of the file. And whenever you save it, you want to be able to, you'll want to rename it, because eventually you're going to have all these files with all these letters and numbers, and you won't know which document you're looking for. So you'll want to call it Kinsaw Index Record, North Carolina, or something like that, so you can find it again. So I'm going to get out of here, and again, this is the indexed record, and it says the name of the person, the groom, the wife, that they're from Roanoke, that they were their age, when they got married, the justice of the peace, and the witnesses. This arrow here takes you back to your search screen, and these arrows over here takes you either forward or backwards on the microfilm. So if I click here, it's taken me one page later in the book. I'm going to go back to the search screen. And now we're going to go to the primary source document. So this is the actual document. And I'm going to scroll in a little bit. And I'm going to close this temporarily. Okay, so on the original document, it's now listing Herbert Kinsaw's father's name and mother's name. It's saying that the father is currently living, but the mother is deceased, and the parents are from Omaha, Illinois. Ruth's parents, her father is deceased, her mother is living, and they're from Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, if you're having difficulties reading some of the items on here, if you open that screen up again, let me move this so we can look at it. It's giving you the transcription of someone has read this, and this is what that they're writing down what they're seeing. So you may or may not agree with it, but if you are having a difficult time reading, you are having basically a second set of eyes interpreting what is written on the screen or written on the document. Over here is related sources. So on that index sources, Ancestry didn't give you any suggested other records. Now, suggested records does not mean that these records belong to Herbert. What Ancestry is telling you is that they have found records of a person with the similar name as the person you're looking at, someone that is maybe in the same geographic region or about the same age. So Ancestry has gathered some documents for you to look at, for you to review, and perhaps they belong to your person. Or maybe it's just someone else with a similar name and in a similar region and age range. So these are records that might be relative to this person you're researching. Okay, so here's source again. This tells you where they got this information. And so the original document is from North Carolina Register of Deeds, and it's on a microfilm, and it tells you where this document came from. One thing I do want to point out is they got married in North Carolina. They live in Virginia. Her family is from Tennessee, and his family is from Illinois. So if you're having a difficult time finding a record, a marriage record, it may be possible that the bride and groom decided to go somewhere else, a neighboring state, a neighboring county, in order to get married. And maybe it was a destination wedding. Maybe they went there, they got married, and they stayed at a nice hotel, and then they came back. So if you are having a difficult time finding a record, you may want to broaden your search to the surrounding area. Again, you can use the invert colors if you're having a difficult time reading this. Okay, I'm going to go back to the search screen and go back to home. So this again is global search. We're going to go up here, and like I said, there's 3 different ways you can find birth, marriage, and death records. The next one is the category search. So they have these collections, and one is birth, marriage, and death. So if you don't want to search all the records for the person, but you just want to search to see if there's any birth, marriage, or death records, you want to go to this category search and just search this collection of records. You're only going to be looking at birth, marriage, and death records. So I'm going to type in Bilderback. And I'm going to do exact, and I'm going to search. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to do Bilderback, and I'm not going to do exact. Okay, so this is a Tennessee death record for a James Bilderback. And the thing I want to point out here is that in the brackets, if I hover, this was added by a member of Ancestry. So another subscriber that uses Ancestry disagreed with the indexer. And so he was able to, here's a little pencil. And if you do this, you can give an alternative name, age, date. So if you're reading the original source document and you disagree with how the transcriber read the document, you have the ability, if you're a subscriber, to put in what you think the record says. So now you can search by either Bilderback, it's now being found if someone types in Bilderback, or Billerback. I'm going to go to the original document. So the transcriber, the person that wrote Biller back, this right here they see as an L, and the person that is a member of Ancestry, they subscribe and they said that it was Builder back, they think that that is a D. Because this person is researching this family, they know that that's a D, and so that's why they inputted that information. So sometimes, again, if you look at the original source document, you may disagree with how they translated that document. So you always want to get back to the primary source document. Again, here's the source, and this came from the Tennessee State Library death records, and it's on microfilm. So it tells you right here where the original data came from. Again, this is going to take you back to your search screen. I'm going to go back to home. So the two ways that we've shown how you can search is the global search. You can go to the category search or the collection search, which is birth, marriage, and death. And the third way I'm going to show you is the card catalog. Now, the card catalog is showing you all the databases that you currently subscribe to for Ancestry or what your public library is subscribing to. So this is my personal Ancestry, so I have 32,000 databases that I subscribe to. You can sort it by the date added, date updated, record count, or the title. So date added these are new databases that they just added to their Ancestry just added. So for instance, this was added on the 23rd of April. Date updated is a collection of database. It's a database that they've had for a while, but they added more records. So for Sweden, they originally added that to the collection on 2014, but they've updated it on April 30th. Record count are the databases that have the most records. So U.S. City directories and school yearbooks have a lot of records in them, as well as the public member trees, people that put their family trees up there for people to search. Now I'm going to go and put date added, and over here I can filter. Now this filter was also available on the other screens, but I'm going to show it on this one. So you can filter by birth, marriage, and death. I'm going to go over here and filter by the United States. And then I'm going to select Wisconsin. And I'm going to go to the Milwaukee birth records. Now you'll notice up here, whenever I do a search, I'm only going to search that database. And because I am searching that database and not doing a global search or looking at birth, marriage, and death collection, they've added different limiters. So for instance, this one has a certificate number that I can search for. So if I know the birth certificate number, I can search for that number and pull up the document. So each database is a little bit different. So if you're in that database, you will have different search options. So I'm going to go and type in no name, and I'm going to search. What no name does is it pulls up all of the babies that whenever they were born, they weren't given a name, and in place of the name, the person that was recording the birth wrote no name. I'll show you an example. So the full name of the child, if named, they wrote no name. So the indexer indexed the child as a first name of no name. So sometimes if you are searching and searching and trying to find a particular person and you're not finding the person, if you go to the database that you think that they would be in, you may want, and you're looking for a birth record, you may want to type in no name and see if you pull it up. Now this will also, which is unusual, in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin birth database, whenever they were doing the birth certificate or the birth record, they also asked the parents, what other children do you have in the household? So this is a really good clue. If you're researching this family, you know what the other names of the children are in that household. And it asks similar information like what the dad does for a living and the birthplace of the father and the birthplace of the mother. So the dad was born in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So that's a little bit different. I've never seen a register of birth where they're asking for the other siblings. So that's kind of a neat. I could go back here to go to previous search results, but if I want to go back to the database and do a new search, I can go and hover over here and I go back to that database. And I'm going to type in baby. So here's baby Olson. So what this person did whenever they were writing down the birth of a child, instead of writing no name, they wrote baby Olson. So this child is, whenever they're indexed, their first name is baby. Now, they probably had another name later on, but when they were born, at the time of their birth, when it was being registered, that child was born without a name. So you want to, again, if you're having trouble finding your person birth record, try either no name or baby. Here again is the source record, and it tells you where the original data is coming from. And the Milwaukee Public Library is where had the original data. I'm going to go back here. Whenever you're on any database, so again, we're on the Milwaukee, Wisconsin births. If you go down to the bottom, it tells you that source information. It will also tell you the types of information you can find in that database. Now I'm going to go back to home. And I'm going to type in Edith R. Honey with a death date of 1924, and that's an exact date. So I'm going to click exact, and I'm going to search. So here's Edith R. Honey, and I'm going to bring it up. And this is an indexed record. So they say that it's Edith R. Honey. She was born about 1862. She was born in Canada. She was a housewife. This is her father's name, her mother's name. And it gives you right here that there is a family history library film number, a microfilm number. Also down here, it tells you where the original data is coming from. And it's coming from Family Search, Salt Lake City. And then again, that has more information. So I'm going to go back to Edith Honey. So this is a secondary source. It's not the primary source, but if it's telling me where they got the original data. So if I go to Family Search and I look for Edith R. Honey, and it says this is the microfilm number, which matches the microfilm number here. I click on here, and this is, I can scroll in. Let's see if we can find Honey. There is Edith Honey. And these are organized. This is a record of deaths, and you will notice that it's not completely chronological. So sometimes when you're in a document, you have to look a little bit, because she's in between the people that died in August 24th and August 27th. It's whenever she was recorded. And this gives you the information. It also gives you the cause of death, which was not on the index, but it is on the original document. And I think that's the only other information that might gives the age in let me go back to Honey. There's Honey. So she was 62 years old, 11 months, and 6 or 0 days. So that gives you a better age than the 62. So you can backtrack that a little bit and figure out the month that she was born, or at least within a month or two. So again, the primary source document will give more information sometimes than the index record. So this is Family Search. Whenever we do our next presentation, a tutorial on how to find records, I will be going into showing you Family Search more. And oops. So again, just to kind of recap a little bit, if you're using the library's database, and not all public libraries have Ancestry, it's going to be called the Ancestry Library Edition, and you would use it within the library, either through their Wi-Fi or their computers. If you have a private subscription to Ancestry, it's Ancestry.com. The Tennessee has created a great database directory of all of the other states' electronic resources. It includes everything the states offer, not just Ancestry. So you want to take a look to see what your state is offering for free for if you're a resident. So if you live in Mississippi, you want to see what the Mississippi State Library offers, and Texas, and so forth. Again, the state of Virginia, if you are in Virginia, does offer an Ancestry version, and it includes death certificates and marriage records and birth records if that individual lived in Virginia. This is the Roanoke Public Library's website, and this is the Virginia Room. We have the Virginia Room is a department of the Roanoke Public Library, and that is our website, and it gives information about genealogy and local history for the Roanoke and Virginia area. If you are researching someone in Virginia and you're stumped, you can email the Virginia Room at virginiaroom@gmail.com. Post your question and say what the problem is, and they may be able to point you in the right direction for your research. And again, our next tutorial will be on finding vital records on familysearch.org. Thank you very much, and don't forget to like and subscribe.